podcast. My goal with this is to introduce you to the men of impact who build the world and create lives of impact so that we can celebrate them and work together to fulfill the call of masculinity in our homes, our communities, and the world. I'm your host, Corey Huddleston, and on today's show, we're going to be talking about the cancer that is human trafficking and prostitution. Okay, it's estimated that there are approximately 24.9 million victims trapped in slavery right now. In the Asia-Pacific region alone, it accounts for 62% of this number. Today's guest decided to do something about it. From an early age, he exhibited a strong desire for adventure, risk, and danger. From pushing the limits physically through unforgiving Ironman triathlons, ultra running races, 4-day paddle races, etc., to being accepted into and serving among the Army's premier direct action raid force, the Rangers. After his military career, he went on to earn a master's in theology and become a pastor and church planner, but a different mission grabbed his heart. God called he and his wife, Ayame, and their 5 children, to help fight against human trafficking in Asia, and they followed the call. So please help me welcome Scott Crosley. Boom, Scott, thanks for being here, my man.
Yeah, you bet. It's good to be here.
Dude, it is. I've been excited about this one. Specifically, we talked about this yesterday just over email, but this being the anniversary of 9/11, and while it's not in the same vein per se, I can't think of a more fitting thing that we all need to be kind of taking the time to recognize as a threat, not only against America, because there's a lot of it that goes on here for sure, but the world over. And, there's a lot of people just based on the estimations of the almost 30 million people in there. And I'm sure that number is much larger than, it's actually estimated. But I'm really excited to dive into this and kind of, just really highlight the big issue here. So I appreciate it, man.
You bet. No, it's good to be here. Yeah, I love this. Is my heart, it's my passion.
Very good, man. Well, so here's the thing I want to kind of kick off with, because I think the idea of modern day slavery still existing is a hard concept for most people to even grasp in the first place. So we're just, it's not something that's kind of front facing. It's kind of in the underground, if you will. And so like, can you help us understand just how big this problem actually is?
Yeah, so it happens everywhere. I mean, not just in Texas, Austin, Texas, where we're from, and not just in Hong Kong where we live now, but just in so many countries across the globe. And the story is often very similar, particularly in Southeast Asia. Man, it's where girls, in Hong Kong specifically, girls are getting, it's the same story. And in the safe house that we help run, the girls there have similar stories too. They oftentimes, most often, will be tricked by a trafficker online that'll buy their ticket and promise them the world to fly them to over here with a great job. Then when they get here, they realize it's not what they thought, and they're kind of forced, or sexually or just monetarily, they become trapped real quick and in debt to this trafficker, who then threatens to hurt their family or otherwise if they don't pay them back and go into this line of work right now. So they're forced either physically or by this bondage that's instantly thrust on them of a financial debt they can't pay back, and they have no recourse. Sometimes their passport's taken. So it's just an ugly thing, because governments like the tourism in Hong Kong and elsewhere, because it draws clients, right, that come here and other places in Thailand and Cambodia particularly, for that reason. And then so they don't want to have the girls there, but then again they do, because it's just this double-edged sword. So they'll close a blind eye to it a lot of times politically, but there's not enough people doing something about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I had heard on the video that you did, and I kind of did some research just on trafficking alone, and it's not always sex trafficking. There's all kinds of forced labor and all kinds of stuff that exists. But in general, and this was in 2014, but the numbers were pretty staggering, saying that there's about $150 billion a year annually in that. I mean, I'm sure it's gone up since that time for sure. But how does one man even make a difference in this? I mean, it seems so overwhelming. If you can even grasp the concept of that it's still happening, and then you understand how massive the problem is, where do you even begin,
No, that's a great question. That's a legitimate reality too, because you dive into it. The more you do, and you think, what difference are we making? It's just such a huge problem. And as soon as you help some, they just get filled again with by pimps filling them with other girls, and but at the same time, you think, well, we are making a difference, and we want others to join our team and join a team, just to join in the fight, because every person that gets pulled out is a win.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can get bogged down in that. But I'd rather be doing this than just sitting at a computer in Texas all day, doing nothing.
Sure. Yeah. Well,
For
I do want to dive deeper into that, and like all of this kind of stuff, but I want to kind of take this step back really quick, because you have an interesting path to even getting to this point in the first place. Like, dude, tell us a little bit about your history and just kind of where you started out with all of this.
Yeah. So I was a pastor actually right out of college, and then went to seminary. And I was in college ministry at some churches. I have roots in California, so I grew up in Northern California. Was on staff at a couple of churches in Southern California, and then but my heart always kind of beat for people far from church and far from God.
Yeah.
And I always kind of felt like a square peg in a round hole working at a church. I thought there's got to be something that's a better fit for me. And my wife first said, "Hey, have you ever thought about being a military chaplain? Because you'll be around a lot of people that are far from God." And so I asked some friends about it that know me well, and said, "Hey, what do you think? Would that be a good fit for me?" And they're like, "No, dude, you're too far out of the box, man. You won't fit in the military, man."
That's funny.
And I had longer hair and everything at that time. And so that made me go, perfect, I want to do it. And then went in in 05 in chaplain school as an officer in the Army. And I picked the Army because I first called the Navy, because I lived in California, so you see a lot of Navy, Marines posters more out there and advertisements. But then I called the Navy and called BUDS, their Navy SEAL school, in 2004. Got through to somebody who could answer it. And I said, "Hey, can chaplains? I'm thinking about coming in. The Air Force seems boring. The Army could work, but I'm wondering if I could become a Navy SEAL as a chaplain." And then the guy just laughed on me on the phone.
That's funny.
And then so the Army, I got through to Ranger Regiment and said, "What can chaplains do? Can they go to Delta Force or become Green Berets or Rangers?" At that time they said only Ranger school, and only if you're very, very lucky and in good shape and the stars align for you, a commander that'll send you and all that. I'm like, okay, I'll go in the Army, because I knew I wanted to be a chaplain, but I also wanted to do some of the fun stuff too. And so that led me to go in, then got a chance to go, and it sucked. I mean, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, going through Ranger schools. At that time, it was 10 years ago, as a 36-year-old chaplain. So I was one of the older guys, and I wasn't infantry. So I had to get a waiver to go, because I had to kind of beg to go as a chaplain. And so the cards were stacked against me, but it was a great, great experience.
So that's interesting, because on the Ranger school side of that, that's one of the harder schools, if not the hardest out there, right? As far as like,
they all vary. It's really a leadership school. They just deprive. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You just got to be able to put up with a lot of suck factors. So you're deprived of sleep. I went in the winter too with a few friends, which was a bad mistake. So you're freezing, and they're pulling guys out for hypothermia, and you're hungry and tired. So you're just miserable, and they want to see how well you can lead and lead troops. When you're miserable, without quitting.
So it's primarily about leadership then.
It is. Yeah.
That's interesting.
But there was a Navy SEAL in our class. They send Navy SEALs there as well if they get a DUI, and it's like a punishment for them to have to go to Army Ranger school.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. So from there, you ended up serving. How long were you in the Rangers?
So I went to Ranger school. I was at the 101st Airborne and deployed with an infantry unit with the Rockasans as their chaplain in 05-06, 12 months in Iraq. And then got off active duty, came in the Texas Guard, and it was the Guard that sent me to Ranger school when I was serving full-time in the Guard first. They sent me, it's the same school though as active, and then stayed in the Guard. And now I just serve like a traditional guardsman. So I serve in Guam now. Since we're in Asia, I get to fly to Guam 1 week in a month and I did it this past week and serve with my soldiers and play Army in between dealing with pimps and prostitutes and everything.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. Thanks for your service, by the way. Appreciate you,
Okay.
man. So you go through all of that. You're pastoring. You're doing all this kind of stuff. Something happens along the way that like makes you have a heart for kind of coming over and doing, getting involved in this trafficking, the human trafficking epidemic. What is the one thing that, if you can kind of think back, like what was there a single thing that kind of opened you up to this concept that this exists, and then really just put that seed in your heart about kind of pushing through and becoming a solution to that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it merges for me, like the worlds of kind of the Army, special operations community, and then the chaplain side. So it's kind of, it merges my hearts in that. And then it's just the darkest problem I can find. And I think if I can make a small dent, and then I saw it. So it's really been the last 5 years of doing a lot of research, of talking to a lot of groups. There's great people doing great work already.
Yeah.
But they need more, and they need our hearts for Asia. We've been to a lot of countries around here, and then I brought my family at first for a year or two. But the long-term 20-year goal we'll be back in Texas for the family and kids. I just wanted to get them exposed to a little bit of it in a safe context here.
Sure.
But then I'll be doing missions forever, in different countries and partnering with different groups and helping on the kind of creative evangelistic rescue part on the front end. It helped because there's a lot of groups that have great back end processes in place. They have safe house, but ironically, they need help
extracting.
Yeah, just getting them and doing them creatively and boldly and whatever. So.
Yeah, I've often thought of that as a problem in general with ministries a lot of times, or any kind of organizations that are doing good. And it seems that there's a lot of times everything becomes siloed. And it's if we would just recognize that we all need each other and each particular organization is doing a thing and kind of unify, I think we could get a lot more done in life, just in general in the space of like nonprofits specifically.
Amen. That's true. Absolutely.
Yeah. So going back to when you were talking about you're over here now, you're doing a lot of that. You've got a lot of those women that are doing that. You mentioned that they were getting flown there or whatever else. Are you saying that there's it's women from the US or different parts of the world that are being flown into Asia, or was that?
Not so much here. No, there's they've come from all over. I mean, there's a lot of from the Philippines.
Okay.
Thailand that come to Hong Kong here. There's even Hong Kongers here from mainland China and elsewhere, Indonesia, some. So Russia, Africa, we've met some. So it's they come from all over, and they all have different, because Hong Kong is a unique animal with visa requirements. Some get rotated through, others can be here for a longer period of time. So it's harder. If we've done some work in Cambodia, and most all the girls that work there are Cambodian girls.
Yeah. So
you can pull them out. It's easier there. Same in Thailand, at least in our experience. Hong Kong's a different animal, and that's why we wanted to come, see if we can make a dent here. But also, we have a heart for the Philippines and elsewhere, and so we're on the front end of a 20-year thing here.
Gotcha. So you were talking about they get kind of drawn there with the promise of all of these great things, and then they get there and their passports are taken and all this. So it's hard to get inside of the mind of somebody who's existing in that, because I think in our kind of almost padded type of environment, it's like, dude, somebody tried to do that with me, I'm going to rip their throat out,
Right.
It's just hard to comprehend what keeps a person in that. And is it just the illusion of fear, or are there real threats involved there, or
I think, well, I know that they take advantage of the vulnerable is what it is. And so it's all money based. So a lot of times they'll think, hey, this can help pay for my parents who are poor in my home country, but they don't necessarily know what the job's going to be. They just think it's a great job. So it's this, oh, great, there's this mystery job I can go do and make money and send it home. And then their brains change in time. Sometimes they get into it so long, they just think, well, I'm already been used and abused so much, I might as well keep doing it. It's just sad. There's a switch that happens. So some of them in our safe house now have been in it for years and years and years, and they have kids. I was talking to one girl this morning in our house at breakfast, and she's new to the house, came in last week. She's got 5 kids in her home country, and she hasn't seen them, I think she said 9 years. So she's been in this. She came over here in the same story I shared, but then's been in it so long. But now she's going to go through our program that we partner with another group that they run the program. Basically, it's 6 to 12 months in this house. They learn good life skills. They come to faith typically as well, and then we send them home. And we send them home with a new trajectory on life, job skills wise, and everything. So they have professional counseling as part of the program too.
So I don't know how much of this you can actually go into, and whatever. So if you can't, or it's not whatever, be beneficial to the long-term goal of what y'all are doing, feel free to just reject this. But like, what is the process for actually doing this? As far as going in and first of all, finding the women that are there women that are just in this by choice?
There are some, yeah. And I don't know a good percentage because it varies on country, and but even that is sad because those girls, they figure there's no other way than to leave their country and come here to support their either family, parents older than them or their little baby or whatever, than to sell their body, knowing that they're going to be, doing that 10 times a day. I mean, that still is just as sad,
Yeah.
And it's once they get here, it's darker than they thought or were told. But a lot of the time, it's not what they wanted to do. When they get here, they get stuck in it, and there's really kind of, I think, two kinds of ways to do it, and that you can call them hard rescues and soft rescues. And so we focus on the soft rescues, meaning this. Hard rescues are when you work with kind of the local government.
Yeah.
And there's great groups that do some great work, some ex-CIA guys and stuff. They're not really here in Hong Kong, but they're elsewhere, and they're doing amazing work.
Okay.
But that takes that's just a different model. And the soft rescues, there's some other groups doing that as well. That's one where without going into too much detail, you basically are pretending to be a client, and you kind of befriend them, and then they realize you're there for a different reason, and then you're building rapport, not just solo, but as a small team, and then you ask them if they want to leave.
Yeah.
So
that whole process. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, that whole process of getting them to leave, it doesn't seem like it would just be as simple as that. Based on what you were talking, based on what you were talking about earlier, right? So, is there? I mean, you're not running into like the pimps. I mean, obviously, who are getting crazy with you or along the way and that kind of thing. Like, how do you negotiate that? Or are you?
In some cases, and because we're on the front end here, we've been here 2 months, but we've been doing about 5 years of research leading up to it.
Yeah.
Because we're preparing this is my, the rest of my working days is going to be in this field. So we've really tried to lay the groundwork and to be prepared. But that also to say that as fast as I'm learning, and I still have a lot to learn.
Sure. Yeah.
But here's what I learned so far. Is that some groups that do the soft rescue approach are okay with paying pimps, and some aren't.
Yeah.
And so I'm personally of the opinion that it's okay on kind of a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Because you don't want to get in the business too, because sometimes a girl can leave, but you can kind of under the table pay a pimp, because everything's about money. And if you pay them enough what the debt is, even though they don't get the recurring monetary gain from that girl, they'll let them go sometimes. So you can literally buy it. But then you got to be careful, because you don't want to just get in a deal with a pimp where they take girls and you're buying them all.
Right.
know?
Yeah. So
some people are ideologically just opposed to that. They will never pay a pimp, and others say, no, that's okay to do. And I'm kind of in the middle at this point.
Yeah.
There's some gray areas in it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. To your point, actually, about what you just said about you start paying the pimps and they're gonna do that. I recently read an article, and it was on this thing called the Cobra Effect, and it was talking about at a point in India's history where they had like this mass overrun of cobras like all over the cities and all this kind of stuff, and so the local government put out basically a call to like kill these snakes, bring in the tail, and we'll pay you based on every snake tail you do. And they saw a pretty drastic decline in the cobra population within the cities, and it worked exactly as it should. But then what happened was the amount of people actually bringing in dead snake tails weren't declining at all. Like it was like the population of them seemingly on the streets was going down, but what was happening is people started bringing in the cobras into their homes and harvesting them. And then, like, you know, then they realized it was being abused, so they shut off that thing. And then what happened was those people just released the cobras back into the streets, and it began this kind of like vicious cycle of doing that. And that's called the Cobra Effect. It's basically the idea that for every action, there's an opposite reaction, right? But in political or anything that we're doing. And, you know, that's when I hear you saying like, hey, we're going to pay the pimp. It's like, well, dang, now you're not you, but just in general, like what's happening, it seems, you know, from my, you know, whatever my opinion's worth in that regard, but that they could just go do whatever they need to do to acquire another 1 or 2 girls and kind of repeat that process.
Right. Yeah. You got to be really careful. And as a Christian, really just have kind of your spiritual, you know, lens and antennas up and say, hey, what's the right thing to do in this case, Lord? You know, is what
I completely agree with you. I think that, you know, you got to play it place by, or, you know, kind of play by play. And what you're doing, I mean, you're out on your boots on the ground, right? So, I mean, for whatever I can sit here and think, you know, it really doesn't matter till you're in that moment. You know, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face, so to speak, right?
Well, that's right. That's right. And that's true. One girl recently noticed my one of my hidden cameras when I was just in a room with her. I hired her for 30 minutes, and I had 2 buddies outside in the hallway just praying just to have people nearby.
Wow.
And then she noticed that, so it went from a great conversation to all of a sudden, I was surprised she noticed it too. They might have been trained to look for that too, for other reasons.
Yeah.
She went, I'm really intrigued by this guy who's paying me just to sit here and talk and not touch me at all, to why did he have a camera? So yeah, there's just so many levels of pain in these girls that they've been abused for other things and it was sad because that was a recent reminder of, when she saw a glimmer of hope that this guy could be, you know, something different. And all of a sudden I became some pervert with a camera. She thought, and I actually gave her the camera. I said, look, there's nothing on here of you or anything, you know?
Yeah.
And, but anyway, just, it reminded me of the levels of depth of pain these girls have gone through.
So, I mean, that's the other war, right? Because it's not just about getting them out, but there's all of this psychological component that has to be dealt with. And you're talking about, so you're not necessarily running the safe houses per se. It sounds like that you're kind of partnered up with other organizations that are doing that.
We are, yeah. And here in Hong Kong, they've asked my 18-year-old daughter and my wife to kind of help run that. But they don't run the counseling. They just kind of, my daughter lives in the house and for a season of time. My wife helps out just to be there kind of logistically, but the girls go to a different location during the day because it's good to get them in a routine, because their routines used to just sleeping with 10 guys a night and up all night and on drugs and, you know, just everything. So now they're in a routine and with a Christian community, but during the day they go to classes, some of which are professional counseling and some of which are how to cook and how to, you know, life skills that they can take back to their home countries. And one gal recently, or back home last year, started a bakery. And now she runs a bakery, and she's out off the streets, you know, here in Hong Kong, back in her home country. So yeah, we're not professional counselors, but we partner up with people who are.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, and look, you know, the number of women that y'all, and I'm assuming there's men involved in that too. I would think. I mean, at least some degree, it's probably not going to be a larger degree by any means, but for the people that y'all are extracting out of that, are there those that kind of decide to go back into it?
Yeah, they just like in anything, people can backslide, you know, and go backwards. But the ones that the group we're working with now, and the ones they've sent home, they have a pretty good rate of of the girls staying out of it, because
Okay.
they do a great job in the safe house, and it all depends on how some groups, if they just want to get them out because it has, you got numbers, say we pulled them out, just like a lot of things, but the quality of that program means everything.
Yeah.
And so we like to partner with different groups, and we're going to start partnering with another one in the Philippines that they do just an amazing job of really kind of mentoring, discipling, investing in these girls before. In that case, they go right back just to the Philippines, just to Manila, so they could be pulled out and go back home 5 miles away.
Yeah.
But they still need that time. It's just like soldiers. They got post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
From combat, but from them, it's just from all the abuse and everything else that's going on.
How has your appearance of humanity changed, or has it at all? Going from, I mean, because like Austin, Texas, Dallas, I mean, really the United States in general. I mean, we're not typically, enlarged, exposed to the darkest parts of humanity, and then you go into a place like that where you're seeing it just constantly. Has that really affected you?
Yeah, that's a good question. It does, and it does affect you, but it's a lot like a deployment or combat when you're, because you can get, your soul can be affected without you knowing it, and so you got to be really self-aware, and also have people who are willing to ask you, hey, how are you doing? You got to be honest back with them. And in this issue specifically, where it can affect you, because you're dealing with, like this last or a recent one, that girl I mentioned earlier, as soon as, in that case, as soon as I go in there, she takes off some of her clothes, like right away.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like looking at my backpack for money, and I'm just going to pay to talk to her. And I'm like, okay, whoa. I just want to talk,
Yeah.
So you're there,
the drive there.
You're getting images seared in your mind, and there's opportunities just to fall into this stuff yourself. And there's been good guys that have done that. So you really have to be, I think, just honest with yourself and be where you're at, and have a support network system around you, and also have times when you're not in it, because it's dark. It's dark, and you feel that. You're not just what you see and experience, but I believe it's kind of like the Matrix movies, where there's that whole other spiritual level of just darkness that's
totally
prevalent.
Yeah, I can only imagine, man. So, like, besides obviously kind of knowing yourself and then having those people there and being accountable and all that kind of stuff, are there ways that you kind of armor up against that? Or is it just you got to take a step back every once in a while to kind of get based? And obviously,
I think it's both. Matter of fact, tonight, right now it's 9:30 here in Hong Kong p.m. But in an hour from now, a friend's going to call us, just because a friend from Texas, and he's like our lead prayer person. And he, as I texted him today and said, hey, my wife last night just had a real kind of dark demonic dream last night, because some of this stuff rubs off for her too. And it just freaked her out. And it was the first one she's really ever had. And so that was just this morning. Right.
Wow.
So it's all interwoven. So he's like, hey, I want to talk to you. And I said, absolutely, man. And I know the passages in the Bible and all that stuff, but it's good to have a brother who can kind of help you say, hey, let's pray through this together. And so I'm taking anything I can get as far as supporting fire to help me out.
Yeah.
Personally.
I can imagine, man. Really, and we all need that in life anyway, but especially when you're doing what you're talking about and kind of going in, and there's definitely a lot of darkness around all of that kind of stuff. So
the way I view it is just to make the analogy to war, because I've deployed, only served as a chaplain, right? So I'm a supporting element. As a chaplain, you have doctors, attorneys, cooks, you have everything that supports kind of the frontline door kickers. Yeah. And whether it's an infantry unit or a unit of special forces unit or whatever, Rangers. And so, but now I feel like kind of I'm a door kicker. And so I need lots of support for me, right? Because I'm kind of on the front. And that's a reversal of roles a little bit for me. I went to Ranger school, but still when I'm deployed, I'm a chaplain. And so I'm supporting them. And so it's just incumbent upon me to say, hey, I got to make sure those are in place. Because unlike the military, where they force all this support, here you got to make sure you have it, or you're gonna bite the dust.
Well, they forced it in. They have the assets to be able to put all that stuff in place, and that's not always easy to do when you're a smaller organization, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, y'all are dealing with some serious stuff. So, I have a question for you because I've got a good buddy of mine. He's been, in commercial real estate for a long time. Down here in Dallas, we have an area. It's over the Harry Hines kind of area, but it's an industrial area, so a lot of the industrial type buildings and stuff are over there. And I've gone down there with him before, just like to go meet up with some of his people, whatever, because I have a marketing company also. Bless you. And it's apparent that area is like what you're talking about. Obviously, probably not as dark, but there are prostitutes walking around blatantly. I mean, they're not. It's not like you could be or potentially. I mean, they're obviously prostitutes, and a lot of the massage shops and all that kind of stuff. And and he's down there. He's kind of become an expert over there. Worked in that area for 15 years. And done a lot of business down there. So he knows which businesses are being shut down for that or whatever else. And there's times where it's completely obvious that something's going on down there, and it just really doesn't seem like local law enforcement. And nothing against local law enforcement, but there's anything really being done about that to some degree, or at least over in that area. Like, and I can't say that the thought hadn't crossed my mind a few times to put together a band of like some hard hitting dudes and just go down there and handle it, And I know that's not the right way, but what is, or can anything be done, in a situation like that, in your opinion?
Yeah. You mean in Southeast Asia or in that?
No, like
area?
just in our own hometowns, even, or like areas where that might be going on.
It's really there's just some great. I read a great book, just finished it today, called The Locust Effect by Gary Hagen. He's with International Justice Mission, but that talks about how so much of abuse is simply due to a lack of a reliable, trustworthy, non-corrupt police force. In so many third world countries, they lack that, and it's the vulnerable and the weak that get exploited for sexual stuff, for everything. They're the ones that can't, they get locked up forever. And so, I mean, even here, I just the first 2 months on the ground here, I'm meeting with whoever I can. Met with a couple FBI folks. One's an FBI agent, American, who's based here in Hong Kong, and I asked him all about, what do you know about this? And he's like, not much really. And and I go, but there's a department that knows some about it, right? And he, told me a little, but I think some of it is, it's not my lane. I mean, honestly, I think it's a couple things. I think it's either they're struggling in that area too. And he's like, man, I kind of enjoy going to those. I'm not saying that for that guy, but people in general, right?
Gotcha.
Sometimes police will do a raid and kind of just say, hey, we checked the box, we did a raid, and then they go back that night and sleep with the girls themselves. So there's this darkness that even exists within all of us that can make us want to close a blind eye to something because we enjoy that at the same time. So that's one whole layer. And another one is there's enough of other stuff to do. I don't want to mess with that, And I think in the gentleman, it was kind of that mentality. He's busy enough, like, I don't even know where to start with all this. And it's really, really hidden here in Hong Kong. And
really?
So
that surprises me.
It's not as open as Cambodia and Thailand. It's you can see it. But here, they have bars here. There's kind of 3 levels. There's just the kind of the bars that there's girls in there, and you walk in. You can tell what it's going on. Then there's the middle ground, which is more of, there's curtains and there's mama sans out front. And you go in, there's girls dancing on poles and stuff. Then there's the 3rd level, which are hidden. You'll never know where they are unless you know where to look. Yeah. And one of them is a 22-story building here, but you would never know what it is and each floor has about 8. It's like a college dorm, but each room has one girl. And you can just go in there, knock on a door, and shop. And then they'll open the door and say a price, and it'll be a 2-3 second transaction. The guy will walk in, the guy will say no. Sometimes I'll watch guys knock on 8 doors before they choose one. And so there's all different kinds even here, but in Hong Kong, it's a little more hidden. I think that's kind of the Chinese shame-based culture. They don't want to. Well, I mean, another story. One business guy, he sells companies, got a lot of money, really successful monetarily here. And we had lunch a couple weeks ago, And he says, I don't believe it exists, Scott. He says, if you can prove it to me, it does. I have a friend that works at CNN here that we will do a big expose on the hidden world of human trafficking in Hong Kong. So he kind of like hung it out there and said, if you can show me it exists in the next 6 months, we have the manpower to do this. But he really genuinely has lived here most of his life and says, I just don't see it. I'm like, well, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right. Well, and how much of that is just because we don't want to look?
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
Right, because it's like we all have this desire to create our world and architect this world in our own mind about what we think things are, that we can almost like miss things that are right in front of us, inside of that. That's a good reminder, Scott. I appreciate you sharing that. That's good. That's good. So whenever y'all have someone that's kind of chosen to go through that, like, what is the bigger goal here? I mean, is it just kind of get the girl out and go on to the next one or whatever else? Is there more of a discipleship in place? Or
yeah, no, that's a good question. It's to have these girls, because there's some great groups and that are, I mean, in Cambodia there's like 500 NGOs that do good work there.
Yeah.
But I'm a big proponent of, I want to help point them towards Jesus, or it's just a short-term fix, really.
Yeah.
It's not an eternal fix, and
really,
so
like everything.
and so I'm partnering with groups that the girls they'll come to faith first and foremost, ideally. I mean, they'll still take them if they're just like, no, I want nothing to do with God, but that's the prayer. And then also learn the life skills and get the training and the counseling before they get sent back home, and so they have the best chance of not falling back into it or not being tricked back into it. And one of the groups in the Philippines that I'm beginning to work with, they utilize those same girls, because in the Philippines, they're Filipino girls with their outreaches, which is a great strategy. And so they'll take them back out with guys and talk to other girls and say, hey, I'm a product of this program. Do you want to get out too? Type of thing, which is just pretty creative. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, is creativity a big part of this whole thing, or is it just kind of cut and dry, like follow a system kind of thing? Or?
No, man. My biggest thing, and we're learning just 2 months on the ground, is I need more guys who are willing to go in. I mean, I want guys from America to fly over for 4 or 5 days, and we'll go out every night. Even here, it's hard for me to find guys that are willing to do it. It's interesting, willing to go with me to rent girls or to meet them in bars and just talk to them. And yeah, I think that's for a couple of reasons. Their wives or girlfriends wouldn't want them to, perhaps.
Yeah.
But or they had a big struggle in this area in the past, and I get that, and they don't want to, slip back into themselves. And that's fine. I get that. But I think some guys, they just fear it, just like anything else. They don't want to. They're because you kind of stand on the edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
In different ways, and they're afraid they're going to fall off or whatever. And so I'm thinking, man, I just need more manpower of men who are willing to come over, and that's what I need, because I can't always go alone. Plus the new faces, and I don't go alone anyway, but I need new faces with me, keeps it where I'm not recognized and mixed up.
That makes total sense. So I think a lot of guys watching this currently might be hearing what you're saying, and they're like, that sounds amazing, dude. But, it's like, I was in the chess club, or I was in the, or whatever, and it's like, they're not the ex-Army Ranger dude, and, and all this kind of stuff. Like, what kind of dude is a good fit for that?
You don't have to be. You really don't. I mean, I've talked to a lot of guys that have done this for years and have way more experience with me, and they have ex-CIA and Marine, just some great backgrounds. And I say, hey, how often are you like in fist fights and stuff, or running down an alley with a pimp chasing you? And I'm honestly yet to meet one. They say no. It's not dangerous. It's just dark. But that darkness is dangerous in a different way. It affects souls and can crush marriages, and so you need guys who know who they are, and they know God, and they're willing to make a difference. So you don't have to be Rambo, but you just have to have, as I have my tagline, just have faith and valor, and I'll take you with me. I mean, I need people. Yeah.
Well, and that's a big part of this interview. I mean, like, as we talked about kind of the call to action, I mean, and we can kind of get into that, but you're legitimately asking right now, like, who inside of this group right now would want to answer that call?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have a screening process for sure. I don't want guys that are addicted to pornography or just, too close to that cliff in other ways.
Right.
But you don't have to. Yeah, it's just guys who are good, confident enough to be able to talk to girls like that in that setting without being too. It's kind of a social skill almost as much as anything.
Yeah.
But I don't come from a background. I was a youth group kid, man. I wasn't like, this big partier that went. The first strip club I ever went in was doing this. It wasn't like in my previous life, Yeah. So, but God uses it and God blesses it, and so so that's one thing for sure is the call to action with more guys willing to come over.
Yeah, that's super cool. All right, so because this is such a huge problem, and like even in our own environments, a lot of times, like I mean, it's not like they're just locked up in a room all the time, or are they? I mean, they're actually somewhat, able to be outside, or maybe not. I mean,
that's the funny thing too. Not funny, but you'd think Hollywood, like everything, they're off a little bit. Just in most military movies, they're off too, but or they sensationalize it. But although I think that on a side note, I saw the trailer today. I think the new Rambo movie coming out. I can't tell by the trailer. It has to do with his niece gets kidnapped and it looks like trafficking. I can't tell until I see the movie. So I'll be like, oh great, that everyone's going to think that's like Taken and Rambo now as well.
So yeah.
But no, a lot of they're not most of the time because I mean I imagine and I know that the kids are. And we're yet to find those in Hong Kong because they're really hidden. And even the pimps ask, I go, hey, I like 12-year-old girls. Do you got some of those? And just playing the role and talking to them. And they're like, oh no, because here they want to get to know, they want to get to know you as a client first, make sure I'm not a cop or something.
Yeah.
So the girls that are above age here, even if they've only been in it a year or two, they have their own place to live or they share it with gals. But they don't want to leave this life because they're in bondage to the trafficker. And sometimes traffickers will say, hey, we'll threaten your family back in the Philippines. We know where they live if you try to leave. And so there's this sometimes an empty threat, but they don't know it's empty. And so it's enough to keep them there. And traffickers, they're making a lot of money, but they're not dumb. And they don't want to have to, have a lock and key on all these girls because that's a lot of time and money and for them to do. Yeah. So psychology can do a lot to keep them in bondage and, loyal to them.
That's crazy. So, I mean, essentially it sounds like what they're doing is completely disintegrating all hope. Like hope is the thing that's basically once you take their hope, they're yours.
Yeah. That's right. That's well said. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. So like at least in the areas where we're at on a normal basis, because they are out and they're probably shopping or do they have money? I don't know. Are they like just straight up destitute kind of thing? Or?
No, they do get a percentage of their, money.
Okay.
And I mean, for example, in Hong Kong, prostitution is legal. It is legal, probably like Las Vegas, but there's stipulations on it. You can't have a third party making money. So then the government can be like, no, it's legal. Everything that goes on here is fine. But the reality is like probably 90%. There's no way to get an accurate stat on it, but just from there's people making money off it, and there are people being there's traffic. People are being trafficked too. So it's just countries can do that and say that, but then really it's a dark underbelly that they're denying. But the girls can make money. And that is one of the issues when they come in the house here with the group we're working with here is it's actually a pay cut. Even the small percentage they get is less than the group we work with pays them. So for the 6 to 12 months they're in the safe house, they get a stipend because they need something to live off as they go to all this training and classes.
Yeah.
But it's a pay cut, and they have to say, hey, I so much want to get out of that lifestyle that I'll make less money and get myself prepared to move back home and to be pulled out of that. So it depends on the girl's frame of mind. Sometimes they just be like, I just want to get out no matter what. Yes. And other times they're like, they're so brainwashed into it. They have to get off drugs for once if they're on them. And then they have to kind of weigh the pros and cons. It's interesting.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. It's amazing what free choice can give to, it's an unleashing a person, good or bad, it seems. So if we're like to actually see somebody, and I've seen signs like at places like the other day I was buying a pair of jeans or whatever, but I went in to this place and inside of the changing room and there was a, hey, are you a victim of sex trafficking? You can call this number right now or whatever. And it's like, just different stuff like that there are signs being posted up, but it's like, what do you look for in that? Like, how would you even know somebody could be a victim of that? And how would you recognize it? And then how would you intercede to help? Or could you?
Yeah, I think in America it's a little different than here. I know more about Southeast Asia than America, but read enough books on kind of how it looks everywhere and the similarities. But yeah, especially in the West, they're really, really preying upon the vulnerable, kind of the lonely outside girls at school. Then a guy will become their friend and pretend to be a boyfriend and buy him nice things, and then eventually there's a point of kind of where it gets tricked, and they realize, oh, he was just using me, and now I'm being forced into this. So the girls, so they're not usually they're not like in America going to be, the really confident captain of the cheerleading team. It's going to be girls who are kind of outcast and lonely and all that. But there's definite exceptions to everything here. It's money driven. People will say, oh, that job looks great. And they get lured in to coming from one Asian country to another Asian country. And especially if they're, they have to be pretty. And so they'll say, you're so beautiful and we can have a job for you and you can work at this restaurant or whatever, and then, or even some of them that come in knowing what it is, they think, oh, this will be a way to pay, which is just so sad. They think I have to sell my body in order to make any money, which is a tragedy in itself.
Do you think that a lot of the pimps are men or women?
Both over here. Yeah. And a lot of the female mama-san pimps are, or have been in it their whole career, and then they just kind of aged out. They're now 50 years old or whatever, and they're too old to do that, so they run it now.
Wow.
And but there's guys too.
Yeah, for sure. Would like talking to those people, like those pimps, I mean, are they just so lost or so gone or so convinced that's okay, or just driven by the money or whatever else, that they're beyond hope in some capacity? Or is it more of a because it seems like you could almost start influencing the influencers to some degree too and make an impact?
Yeah. I tried an experiment a few weeks ago. I had my boys out with me. My sons are 13 and 15 right now. Two of our 5 kids. Anyway, so we were walking by some of them at night, and it wasn't the middle of the night. It was like 9 at night or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to see too much, but I just wanted to see if they'd let them go in to one of the. I described the 3 of them. This was kind of the middle lane one where there's a mama-san outside and a curtain. You go in. And I just said, hey, I kind of just played dumb and be like, hey, we just got off an airplane and we're looking for something to eat. You guys have good burgers in here? And just try to almost start out opening the curtain, to see if they'd be like, yeah. And surprisingly, in a good way, those mama-sans said, no, your boy's too young, which was really interesting to me. So I was kind of, so I tried that in about 5, 6, 7 different places there, and they all kind of said the same thing. So it's almost like there's this morality that exists. It's like when I was a prison chaplain years ago, there's levels, there's hierarchies of inmates. So if your crime's not as bad as this one, same thing there, where they think, no, it's okay to exploit young girls, but don't bring your young boys in here to see it, like, okay.
That's interesting. Well, I think over in China, I mean, I don't know how it is now, but I know traditionally they've always had more of a higher regard for boys or men over women anyway, right? So that might be part of that.
Yeah, and it's probably different too. It is different in other countries, in other Asian countries. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because or at least in China, I mean, I have an adopted sister from China, but over there, I mean, it's specifically, like if they have any kind of abnormalities, but I don't know how it is now, but they did have a kind of a limit on how many kids you could actually have. So if they had girls, they would give those up for adoption so that they could keep their limit of boys because they wanted their names to go on, and so they're,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, one of our 5 kids we adopted from China because
awesome.
yeah, we've had him 10 years now, but he's a boy, but because he had a cleft palate, they said,
that's
oh,
my sister.
he's not perfect, so we're gonna he was discarded and left on a porch. Yeah.
Wow, man, that's amazing, and I appreciate your wide open and being able to kind of walk through this. I coming on, I didn't really know how much of this we were going to be able to talk about or whatever, but and hopefully we didn't kind of take any roads that could put you in danger or what you're doing, because obviously the mission comes first. So
it's all good. Yeah, what I said. Yeah, if people, I mean, the 2 big things are people can reach out to me through our website, pivotcmx.com, to if they have an interest to help out as far as, guys coming over, then they can go through my screening process and that. But also, just like anything, it just takes money. I mean, renting girls is expensive.
Is it?
So it is, especially in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong's just an expensive city. And so it just takes, like any good thing, just money. And we have a great team of supporters, but we just need more. And we kind of stepped out in faith and came over here even before we were fully funded. And we're just like, God's going to provide. Let's go, And so now we're walking by faith, and He is, but it's still like a faith journey, step by step.
So your website's Pivot CMX, right?
PivotCMX.com. And we chose .com when we started this a while back, but we're not our own nonprofit yet. We fall under another group called Sowers International for the time being. We still want to spend the money to become our own, but also because if we end up having the girls if we need to have a business eventually, I wanted the .com in the sense of girls that can make candles or something that they sell as a nonprofit thing. But anyways, it's just a marketing thing for opens doors down the road.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But we fall under another nonprofit missions umbrella, and that's kind of our checks and balances and everything.
Man, that's really good, Scott. Man, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be on and really opening up, even just a glimpse into this darkness, because obviously the first key is awareness. If people don't know about it, there's nothing that can be done about it, and it's a large problem. It's not just something that's happening, in little, third world countries either. I mean, this is happening all over the place, and it's a huge epidemic. Yeah. And I think, a lot of times it's easy for us to kind of just, dismiss, but the reality is it's easy to do that until one day it could be your wife or your daughter or your, mom or, something like that. I mean, who knows, but or your son or your whatever, I mean, and so this is something that we all need to be aware of. I do have a last question for you though. So like, you've kind of just jumped all in, and gone into this thing, that fulfills your purpose, right? And that you were put on this earth to do something like that. Like, and a lot of men don't do that.
Yeah.
And was it because you were aware of it, or was it just because you didn't starve it out? And then how is your wife handling that too? I mean, I know she's a part of this, but there's gotta be, I mean, they're like most guys, their wives aren't just gonna be like, hey, here's some money, go, into these brothels, and
right? Yeah. I think that's a good question, man. I think, we've been married 23 years. And so she knows we have a good marriage, just kind of has always pretty much come easy, for us. It's just there's wind at the back, other things may not, but it's different for everybody. But anyway, so that piece of it is she's just fully supportive and trusts me, and she's behind the idea. That's why we're all here at first together.
Yeah.
And then we move back in a year or two, but then that launches the ministry for all of our connections and how we push forward. But no, I think for men in general, especially men in America and even Christian men too. They're yearning for something to make a difference in something.
Yeah.
And their job is just, man, at a keyboard, or it's just selling widgets, so they want to do something else. And it's possible in a ton of different ways to do that. But I just don't want to get to the end of my life and be like, did I make a difference? I want to just say, man, I know we made a difference, and
That's amazing. Yeah.
But it's hard.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's really the call in a lot of ways. Is this is an opportunity for men to be a part of something. And if you don't feel like you can be in the fight, like boots on the ground, then, like they need the financial resources to be able to move forward. So pivotcmx.com, and you can make donations there, right? On that website.
Yeah, right. EFT right through the website. Yeah.
Yeah. And learn more about what they're doing. I'm sure Scott would be more than happy to talk with you if you have any questions kind of moving forward. And regardless, they are coming. You do kind of bounce back and forth between here, there, and the States, right? So, I mean.
Yeah, we do.
Even that. So, Scott, dude, I really appreciate you, bro. And I'm praying with you, for you. And we'll definitely be in touch and, be a part of however we can and what you're doing. So appreciate the hard work, man.
Thanks, Corey. Appreciate it, brother.
All right, well, y'all have a good day. Thanks for taking part and watching this, and let us know if you have any questions in the comments section. Touch you soon. If you're new also to this and you're watching this on YouTube, you can come to wisdomandgrit.com/community and join our free elite men's group, and just do what you can to become the man that builds the world. And you have the opportunity to be a part of an awesome environment right now. A lot of you guys are watching live. Inside of that group, you get first access to these podcasts, to these interviews, and a bunch of other interesting information, trainings, things like that. And so you can join that at wisdomandgrit.com/community. And we'd love to have you and become a part of the almost 900 other men at this time who are doing what they can to be a man that builds the world. So y'all have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you later.